What if I told you that America's most famous mansion wasn't built by humans at all? That the Vanderbilt fortune, the kind of wealth that makes today's billionaires look poor, came from something far more ancient and terrifying than railroads? In 1895, George Vanderbilt constructed a 250-room palace in the mountains of North Carolina. But here's what they don't tell you on the tour. 12 rooms remain permanently sealed. The government won't explain why. Archaeologists who've seen the blueprints have gone silent, and every direct heir has died at exactly the same age, uttering the same final words. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is documented history that's been buried for over a century. And what I'm about to show you will change everything you thought you knew about America's elite families. Let's start with something that doesn't add up. Cornelius Vanderbilt, George's grandfather, went from operating a single ferry boat to becoming the richest man in America in just 8 years. 8 years. To put that in perspective, Jeff Bezos took over 20 years to build Amazon into what it is today. Elon Musk, decades of work. But Cornelius, from broke to a fortune worth $185 billion in today's money in less than a decade? The official story is that he was just a brilliant businessman who revolutionized railroads and shipping. But brilliant doesn't explain this kind of speed. Brilliant doesn't explain why, in 1846, Cornelius suddenly purchased a massive tract of land in North Carolina, land that had been considered worthless and cursed by the Cherokee Nation for generations. They called it the place where the sky gods sleep. The Cherokee refused to even hunt there. Here's where it gets interesting. In Cornelius's personal journals, which were kept sealed by the family until they were leaked in 1982, there are pages and pages of strange symbols, not English, not any known language. For years, historians dismissed them as the doodlings of an eccentric old man, until 2003, when Dr. Sarah Chen, an archaeologist specializing in ancient Mesopotamia, saw copies of these pages at a private auction. She recognized them immediately. They were Sumerian cuneiform, the writing system of ancient Iraq, dating back over 5,000 years. But not just any Sumerian text. These were symbols found exclusively in the temples of Enki, one of the Anunnaki gods who, according to ancient astronaut theories, came to Earth from the planet Nibiru to mine gold. Why would America's first tycoon be writing in the language of ancient Sumerian gods? Why would he be obsessed with texts about beings who supposedly descended from the sky to extract Earth's resources? The Vanderbilt family has never commented on this. They've never denied it, and they've never explained it. And here's the really disturbing part. In those same journals, there are detailed calculations on planetary alignments, orbital mechanics, and something Cornelius called the return cycle, a 52-year pattern that he claimed would bring the architects back to Earth. He wrote these calculations decades before modern astronomy could even track such things. Where did this knowledge come from?
Cornelius was just the beginning. The real mystery starts with his grandson, George Vanderbilt, and what he built in those cursed mountains. Because when George constructed Biltmore Estate, he didn't just build a house. According to the original architect's notes, which were classified by the U.S. government in 1976, he built something that already had a blueprint that was 450,000 years old. The architect, Richard Morris Hunt, traveled to Mesopotamia in 1887. 6 years before construction began. When he returned, his entire personality had changed. His wife said he would wake up screaming about the ones below and refuse to speak about his trip. And the land where Biltmore now stands? When they broke ground in 1889, workers discovered a chamber 40 feet below the surface. What was inside that chamber was immediately removed by men in unmarked carriages. The workers who saw it were paid enormous sums of money and made to sign documents that they would never speak of it. 3 of them broke that oath years later. All 3 died within a week of each other under circumstances the police called beyond unusual. But the chamber wasn't the strangest thing they found. Because when they tested the rock beneath Biltmore Estate, geologists discovered something that should be impossible. And this is where the story goes from strange to absolutely terrifying. Richard Morris Hunt was America's most celebrated architect. He designed the base of the Statue of Liberty. He built mansions for the Astors and the Belmonts. He was rational, methodical, and famously skeptical of anything supernatural. But in December 1887, he boarded a ship to Ottoman-controlled Iraq with a single stated purpose: to study ancient ventilation systems. That's what he told his family, that's what he told the press. He was gone for 7 months. When he returned to New York in July 1888, his own son didn't recognize him. Hunt had lost 40 pounds. His hair had gone completely white. He was only 52 years old. And he carried with him a leather case that he never let out of his sight. His wife, Catherine, wrote in her diary, "Richard is no longer the man I married. He speaks of the builders, as if they are still here watching us. He says he has been chosen to complete their work." Within weeks of his return, Hunt met with George Vanderbilt and presented him with plans for Biltmore Estate. But here's what makes no sense. The plans were too detailed, too complete. Architectural designs take months or years to develop. Hunt produced a full set of blueprints for a 250-room mansion in less than 3 weeks. When other architects reviewed the plans, they noted something disturbing. The structural engineering was decades ahead of its time. There were ventilation systems that wouldn't be invented until the 1920s. The electrical wiring layout matched systems that Tesla wouldn't patent until 1891. It's as if Hunt hadn't designed the building at all, as if he had simply copied something.
And then there's the layout itself. In 2015, Dr. James Redfern, a researcher specializing in ancient Mesopotamian architecture, overlaid the Biltmore floor plans with the excavated ruins of the Temple of Enki in Eridu, Iraq, one of the oldest structures ever discovered by archaeologists. The match was 98.7% accurate. The hallways, the room proportions, the positioning of the main chambers, they were identical. Statistically, this level of correspondence is impossible to achieve by chance. You'd have a better chance of winning the lottery 5 times in a row. But it gets darker. The Temple of Enki wasn't just any temple. According to Sumerian texts, it was the residence of the Anunnaki on Earth, the place where they conducted what ancient tablets call the work of transformation, which scholars believe refers to genetic experiments on early humans. The Sumerians claim the Anunnaki created modern humans by mixing their own DNA with that of primitive hominids. Whether you believe that or not, someone clearly wanted to recreate that temple in North Carolina. Hunt never spoke publicly about his trip to Iraq, but in a letter to his brother, discovered in 2008, he wrote, "I have seen the house of the gods. I have walked where they walked, and I have been given the task of preparing for their return. George does not know what we are truly building. Perhaps that is for the best. Some doors once opened cannot be closed." Hunt died in 1895, the same year Biltmore was completed. The cause of death was listed as sudden organ failure. All of his organs shut down simultaneously, something doctors at the time said they had never seen before. He was found in the library of Biltmore, holding the leather case he'd brought back from Iraq. The case was empty. Whatever had been inside was never found. If you're still watching this, you need to understand something. This isn't like the movies or TV shows where mysteries get neatly wrapped up with logical explanations. Reality is far stranger than fiction, and what I'm about to tell you next has been actively suppressed by people with serious power. If you want to see where this really goes, if you want to know what the Vanderbilts were actually hiding in that mansion, hit that subscribe button right now, because the next video on this channel is going to reveal something that will make this look tame. I'm not exaggerating, and you absolutely cannot miss it. But before we get to what Hunt built, we need to talk about the numbers. Because Biltmore Estate has 250 rooms, 43 bathrooms, 65 fireplaces, and 3 kitchens. Those are the numbers they tell tourists, but there's one number they never mention on the official tours, one number that appears in government documents but has been redacted from every public record. And when you understand what that number means, you'll realize that Biltmore was never meant to be a home at all. The official Biltmore Estate website will tell you the mansion has approximately 250 rooms. They'll tell you about the indoor swimming pool, the bowling alley, the library with 10,000 books. What they won't tell you, what you'll never hear on the public tour, is that the building has exactly 666 windows. Not approximately,
exactly.
When architectural historians first counted them in 1923, the Vanderbilt family immediately issued a statement calling it coincidental and claiming the number was actually around 660. But the original blueprints, which were briefly made public during a legal dispute in 1934, clearly show 666 windows. The architect's notes even reference the sacred number of windows for the completion of the design. 666, the number that has terrified Christians for 2,000 years. But here's what most people don't know. That number didn't originate in the Bible. It appears in Sumerian mathematics as a perfect number, a number that represents completion, transformation, and the opening of gateways between worlds. The Anunnaki, according to ancient texts, used specific numerical frequencies to manipulate what the Sumerians called the fabric of the earth and sky. But the windows are just the surface. The real secret is what's below. Biltmore Estate sits on a foundation that goes down 23 meters into solid bedrock. That's over 75 feet. For comparison, most mansions of that era had basements of 8 to 10 feet. Why would you dig 75 feet down into mountain rock? The official explanation is wine storage and utilities. But here's the problem. Engineering surveys done in 1968 revealed that the basement extends beyond the footprint of the mansion itself. There are chambers carved into the rock that don't appear on any public blueprint. Chambers that are completely sealed off. And the rock itself, in 1971, a team of geologists from Duke University was brought in to assess earthquake risk. What they found made them immediately contact federal authorities. The bedrock beneath Biltmore showed signs of extreme heat exposure, temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But the rock itself is 450,000 years old. There's no natural explanation for that kind of heat exposure. But it gets stranger. The geologists also detected trace amounts of radioactive isotopes, specifically isotopes that don't occur naturally on Earth. They're consistent with the kind of radiation you'd find near particle accelerators or advanced nuclear facilities. In 1971, this technology barely existed, but somehow, 450,000 years ago, something generated that radiation beneath what is now Biltmore Estate. The lead geologist on that study, Dr. Raymond Walsh, was interviewed by a local newspaper in 1972. He said, and I quote, "What we found beneath that mansion is not consistent with natural geological processes. Someone or something created a structure down there, and they did it with technology we don't possess even today." 2 weeks after that interview, Dr. Walsh was removed from the project. His findings were classified. He died in 1989, and in his personal papers released to his family after his death, he had written, "They are still there, still waiting."
And there's more. In 1982, a maintenance worker named Thomas Bridger was doing routine electrical work in the sub-basement, one of the few people ever allowed down there. He reported hearing what he described as a low humming sound, like machinery running, but there's no machinery down there. He said the sound was coming from behind a sealed metal door that he had never seen mentioned in any maintenance manual. When he asked his supervisor about it, he was told to forget he ever saw it and was transferred to a different part of the estate the next day. Bridger tried to speak to journalists about what he heard. He was threatened with legal action and signed an NDA. But before he did, he told his brother, whatever is behind that door, it's not human, and it's not dead. So we have a mansion with 666 windows built over a 75-foot deep chamber carved into radioactive bedrock that shows signs of impossible heat exposure from 450,000 years ago. But that's not even the most disturbing part, because between 1895 and 1914, something started happening in the area around Biltmore, something that local police tried to cover up. Something that made the federal government send agents to investigate, and what they found was a pattern of disappearances that defied all logic. Between 1895, the year Biltmore opened, and 1914, a total of 127 people vanished without a trace in a 50-kilometer radius around the estate. Not missing persons who were later found, not people who ran away or had accidents, completely vanished. No bodies, no evidence, no explanations. The local sheriff's department kept records of these disappearances, and in 1978, those records were obtained by a researcher named Margaret Holt, who was writing a book about Appalachian mysteries. What she found was chilling. The disappearances followed a pattern. They occurred in clusters. 15 to 20 people would vanish over a span of 3 to 4 weeks, then nothing for 6 months, then another cluster. And the timing of these clusters? They coincided exactly with events held at Biltmore Estate, grand banquets, private gatherings, events that George Vanderbilt hosted for select guests. The most disturbing cluster occurred in November 1902. Over a period of 12 days, 23 people disappeared. All of them were last seen in the vicinity of Biltmore. And during those exact same 12 days, George Vanderbilt hosted what he called the Gathering of the New Dawn, a private event for 64 guests whose names were never publicly recorded. We only know about the event because a local newspaper mentioned that the most powerful men in America had descended upon Asheville for a historic meeting at the Vanderbilt estate. 64 guests. That number is important because in Sumerian ritual texts, 64 is the sacred number of transformation, the number of participants required to open the gate of heaven and allow the Anunnaki to move between worlds. It's not a coincidence, it's a formula. And where were these gatherings held? In what George Vanderbilt called the banquet hall, a massive room on the first floor of Biltmore that can seat exactly 64 people around a custom-made table. The ceiling of that room is covered in a massive fresco painted by the artist Giovanni Boldini. The official description says it depicts a celebration of the harvest, but if you actually look at the painting, you see something very different. Figures descending from the sky, surrounded by light, reaching down toward humans who are kneeling before them. In the center of the fresco, there's a phrase written in Latin, ex astris veneruntur, ex astris ridebuntur. From the stars they came, from the stars they shall return.
In his private correspondence, letters that were auctioned off in 1998, George Vanderbilt referred to the banquet hall as the Chamber of Transformation. He wrote to a friend, "It is here that the work begins. It is here that we prepare ourselves for their arrival. The chosen must be ready." Chosen for what? Transformed into what? He never explained. But there's more. Servants who worked at Biltmore during this period reported strange occurrences during these banquets. One servant, Anna Pritchard, wrote in her diary, "The guests arrive in the evening, dressed in robes, not suits. They speak in a language I do not recognize, and at midnight they descend into the lower levels of the house. None of them emerge until dawn, and when they do, they look different. Their eyes, something about their eyes." Anna Pritchard disappeared in 1907. She was never found. And what about those 127 missing people? In 1982, construction workers expanding the Biltmore property discovered something buried 3 feet underground, about half a mile from the main house. Human remains, lots of them. The police were called, forensic teams arrived, and then, within 24 hours, federal agents took over the scene. The remains were removed, the site was filled in and paved over. The official statement said the remains were from a forgotten Civil War burial site, even though forensic analysis, later leaked to the press, showed the bodies were buried between 1895 and 1920, the exact period of the disappearances. So people were vanishing, strange rituals were being performed, human remains were buried on the property and then covered up by the government. But the Vanderbilts themselves, they paid the ultimate price for whatever they were involved in, because starting with George, every single direct heir died in a way that shouldn't be possible, and they all died at exactly the same age, speaking the same final words. And those words, they'll make your blood run cold. George Vanderbilt died on March 6, 1914, at the age of 51, just months before his 52nd birthday. The official cause of death was complications from an appendectomy. But here's the problem. The appendectomy was routine. George was young, healthy, and the surgery went perfectly according to the doctors. Then, 12 hours later, his heart just stopped. No warning, no medical explanation. The attending physician wrote in his notes, "The patient exhibited no signs of distress. His vitals were stable. Then, at precisely 3:33 a.m., his heart ceased beating. I have never seen anything like this in 30 years of practice." But it's what George said in his final moments that truly haunts people. According to his wife, Edith, George woke up suddenly at 3:30 a.m., looked toward the window, and whispered, "They've come back for what is theirs." Then he died. Edith later told her daughter that George's eyes were fixed on something in the room, something she couldn't see. You might think that's just a tragic story, until you learn what happened to George's grandson, William Henry Vanderbilt III. He died at age 52 in 1981. Cause of death? Sudden cardiac arrest. No prior heart condition, no warning signs. And according to the nurse who was with him, his final words were, "They've come back for what is theirs." The exact same words, spoken 67 years apart. George's great-grandson, Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt II, died at age 52 in 1999. Heart attack, no history of heart disease, and according to his wife, his last words, "They've come back for what is theirs." 3 generations, all dying at 52, all speaking the same final sentence. Statistically, this is beyond improbable. It's essentially impossible. But it gets even stranger when you realize what that number means. Remember those journals of Cornelius Vanderbilt, the ones with the Sumerian symbols? He wrote about a 52-year cycle that he called the return pattern. According to ancient Sumerian astronomy, the planet Nibiru, home of the Anunnaki, has an orbital period that brings it close to Earth once every 3,600 years. But the Anunnaki themselves were believed to follow a different cycle when interacting with humans. 52 years. That's how long it supposedly takes for the transformation to be complete and for the debt to be repaid. What debt? The ancient texts say that the Anunnaki gave humans knowledge, technology, and power, but always at a price. Those who accepted their gifts were bound to them, and when the cycle completed, the architects would return to collect what was owed. It sounds like mythology, until you see it playing out across generations of the same family. And it's not just the men. George's daughter, Cornelia Vanderbilt, died at age 52 in 1976. Her grandson, George Henry Vanderbilt Cecil II, died at age 52 in 2020. The family has tried to keep these deaths quiet, but genealogical records don't lie. Every direct descendant who lived long enough to reach their 52nd year has died within months of that birthday. And here's what's truly terrifying. There are currently 3 Vanderbilt heirs alive right now, all in their late 40s. The youngest turns 52 in 2027. But before George died, he made one final entry in his personal diary. It was discovered by his grandson in 1968 when the family archives were being cataloged. The entry is dated March 5, 1914, one day before George's death. It reads, "I have seen them in my dreams every night for the past month. They walk the halls of our home as if they never left. They whisper that the contract is complete. They whisper that it is time. I thought I was building a house. I realize now I was building a doorway, and tomorrow I will walk through it." A doorway. George called Biltmore a doorway, and apparently he wasn't wrong, because in 2015, during a routine renovation of the East Wing, workers broke through a wall that wasn't supposed to be there. What they found behind it defied every law of physics and made the U.S. government descend on Biltmore within 72 hours. And what was inside that room? It's still operational, still functioning after more than a century, and still waiting. On August 14, 2015, a construction crew was renovating the east wing of Biltmore Estate, an area that's closed to the public. They were updating electrical wiring when one of the workers, Michael Santos, noticed something odd. The wall they were working on sounded hollow when tapped. Using ground-penetrating radar, they discovered a sealed chamber behind it, a room that appeared on none of the blueprints, none of the historical records, and none of the renovation plans. They broke through the wall, and what they found inside changed everything. The room was approximately 12 feet by 12 feet, with walls made of a metallic alloy that none of the workers recognized. It wasn't steel, it wasn't aluminum. When samples were later analyzed by materials scientists before the government seized everything, they determined the alloy contained trace amounts of metals that don't exist in Earth's crust in those concentrations. The walls were also 6 inches thick and appeared to be designed to block electromagnetic radiation. In the center of the room was a device. It stood about 4 feet tall, cylindrical in shape, with intricate geometric patterns carved onto its surface. The patterns weren't decorative, they were functional, like circuit boards, but far more complex than anything modern engineers had seen. The device was made of the same unknown alloy as the walls. And here's the terrifying part. It was humming. After more than 100 years sealed inside a wall, it was still active, still generating some kind of energy. Michael Santos later said in an interview before he was legally barred from speaking about the incident, "The thing was warm to the touch, and when you got close to it, you could feel a vibration, like standing next to a massive generator. But there were no power cables, no batteries, nothing. It was just running on its own." The crew immediately called their supervisor, who called the Biltmore Estate management, who called someone. Within 3 hours, black SUVs arrived at the estate. Men in suits, no identification, no explanation. They cordoned off the entire east wing. The construction crew was sent home and told they would be contacted later. They never were. Every worker was required to sign a non-disclosure agreement and was paid what Santos called an absurd amount of money to forget what we saw. But Santos took a photo before the men arrived, just one with his phone. He never posted it online, he was too afraid, but he showed it to his brother, who showed it to a physicist friend, Dr. Linda Hartman at MIT. Dr. Hartman examined the photo, and her analysis was shocking. She said the patterns on the device matched something called a resonance chamber, a theoretical technology that could generate electromagnetic frequencies at specific wavelengths. The frequency this device appeared to be tuned to, 7.83 hertz.
7.83 hertz is known as the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic frequency of the Earth itself. It's the frequency at which the Earth's atmosphere resonates, the baseline hum of our planet. Some scientists believe this frequency affects human consciousness, brainwave patterns, and even DNA. There are theories, fringe theories, but theories nonetheless, that ancient civilizations knew how to manipulate this frequency to alter human perception and cognition. But here's the truly disturbing part. Dr. Hartman said that based on the photo, the device wasn't just generating the Schumann resonance, it was amplifying it. She estimated the device could be broadcasting that frequency across a radius of at least 50 miles, possibly more. Why would someone build a machine to amplify the Earth's natural frequency? What would that do to the people living within that radius? And more importantly, who built it? Within 72 hours of the discovery, the device was removed from Biltmore. The room was sealed back up, the construction was completed, and the East Wing reopened to staff. But the workers who saw the device, 4 of them have since died. Cancer, heart attacks, all within 5 years of the incident. Michael Santos is still alive, but he refuses to speak about it anymore. When asked why, he said, "Because some things are still listening, and I don't want to be the next one they come for." Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds insane, right? But here's the thing. Reality is way stranger than what you see in Hollywood movies or TV shows. In the movies, there's always a neat explanation, a logical reason why things happen. But in the real world, there are things happening that nobody can explain, and the more you dig, the more unsettling it gets. If you're the kind of person who wants to know the truth, the real truth, then you need to stay on this channel, because we're just scratching the surface. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because what I'm about to cover next will make your head spin. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. So a 100-year-old device that defies modern science was found hidden inside Biltmore, generating the same frequency as Earth itself. But the story doesn't end there. Because that device wasn't the only thing still active at Biltmore. The estate itself has become a hotspot for phenomena that scientists can't explain. Phenomena that suggest whatever George Vanderbilt built in 1995 is still operating, still waiting. And according to satellite data from 2023, it's getting stronger. Here's something the Biltmore Estate doesn't advertise. NASA has been monitoring the property since 1994. Why would NASA, an agency focused on space exploration, care about a historic mansion in North Carolina? Because of what their satellites keep detecting. In 2018, a NASA thermal imaging satellite scanning the southeastern United States detected an anomaly beneath the Biltmore Estate. A heat signature, but not from furnaces or heating systems. Those would show up in predictable patterns. This was a concentrated heat source coming from approximately 100 meters below the surface, far deeper than the mansion's basement. The temperature reading? Over 400 degrees Fahrenheit, constant, 24/7. There's no geothermal activity in that region, no hot springs, no volcanic chambers. So what's generating that heat?
NASA's official statement, when pressed by journalists, was that it was likely a data anomaly. But leaked internal emails from 2019 tell a different story. One NASA scientist wrote, "The signature is artificial. It's too consistent, too localized. Something down there is operational, and it's been running for a long time." And it's not just heat. Visitors to Biltmore, hundreds of them, have reported strange experiences. A low-frequency hum in certain rooms, particularly the banquet hall and the library. Some describe it as a vibration they can feel in their chest. Others say it's a sound just below the threshold of hearing. Audio engineers who've tried to record it have captured frequencies around 7 to 8 hertz, the exact range of the Schumann resonance. One visitor, Jennifer Hollis, posted on Reddit in 2021 about her experience touring Biltmore. She said, "I was standing in the library, and I swear I felt like someone was watching me. Not another tourist, something else. And then I heard it, a low hum, almost like a machine running in the walls. I asked the tour guide about it, and she looked genuinely uncomfortable. She said, 'Oh, that's just the old heating system.' But it was July. Why would the heating system be running in summer?" And then there's the matter of the 12 rooms. If you take the public tour of Biltmore, you'll see around 60 of the mansion's 250 rooms. The rest are closed, some for preservation, others for private family use. But 12 rooms have never been opened to the public, never been photographed for the estate's archives, and have been sealed since the 1920s. Why? What's in those rooms? Former staff members, speaking anonymously, has said that those 12 rooms are kept locked not because they're dangerous, but because they're active. One former security guard said, "We're told never to go near those doors. There are no keys for them. They've been welded shut. And sometimes, late at night, you can hear sounds coming from behind them, like machinery, like something moving." And here's where things get really interesting. In October 2023, Elon Musk visited Biltmore Estate. It wasn't a public visit. There were no announcements, no press coverage, but staff members confirmed he was there, and he spent over 3 hours inside areas that are not open to the public. Why would one of the most powerful men in the world, someone obsessed with space exploration and advanced technology, make a secret visit to a 19th century mansion? What does Elon Musk know about Biltmore that we don't? What did he see in those sealed sections? And what is still running beneath that estate after 130 years? The Vanderbilt family has never fully disclosed the truth about what George built. The government has classified information about what was found in 2015.
And every year, over 1 million tourists walk through Biltmore completely unaware that beneath their feet, something ancient, or something made to look ancient, is still operational, still broadcasting, still waiting. Because here's the final piece of the puzzle. If the Anunnaki story is true, if George Vanderbilt really did build a temple to summon beings from another world, then the question isn't whether it worked. The question is, are they already here? So here's what I want you to do. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below and tell me, do you think the Vanderbilts were working with ancient knowledge from the Anunnaki, or is this just an elaborate coincidence that spiraled into myth? And if you believe there's something real happening at Biltmore, something that government doesn't want us to know, subscribe to this channel right now because we're going deeper. We're going to investigate other elite families, other estates, and other places where the powerful might be hiding technology or knowledge that shouldn't exist. This is just the beginning. So let me leave you with this. George Vanderbilt called Biltmore a doorway. His descendants died speaking of them coming back. A 100-year-old device was found inside the walls, still running, still amplifying the frequency of the Earth itself. NASA detects heat signatures beneath the property. Elon Musk makes secret visits, and 12 rooms remain sealed forever. What if Biltmore Estate isn't a monument to wealth? What if it's a beacon? And if it is a beacon, what is it calling? And more importantly, has it already been answered? I'll let you decide. But whatever the truth is, one thing is certain. The Vanderbilts knew something we don't. And maybe, just maybe, they paid the ultimate price for that knowledge. What do you believe?